In my previous life, my roommate stole my research paper. I reported it to my advisor, but he told me to shut up for the sake of evaluation rankings. Seeing this, my roommate turned around and accused me of plagiarism and slander. I was expelled from school, blacklisted from employment, while she was recommended for graduate school and even named an outstanding graduate. I was utterly devastated. When I opened my eyes again, I was back to the day I discovered the theft. Smiling, I deleted the entire paper. This time, I would make sure my roommate met a miserable end. When I opened my eyes, the dormitory curtain was slapping against the wall with the wind. The computer on the desk was still on, the screen frozen on that paper. Research on optimization of anomaly recognition models based on multivariate perception data. The time in the bottom right corner read, 2:47 a.m., May 13th. I stared at that date, my fingers frozen on the keyboard, my breath catching for a moment. I remembered this day to my dying breath. In my previous life, it all started here. My paper was stolen by my roommate, Sue Man. She took my work to our advisor, Zhou Mingyuan, to claim credit, then turned around and accused me of plagiarism and slander. I was expelled, publicly denounced, and rejected by every employer. On graduation day, Sue Man stood on stage receiving the outstanding graduate certificate, while I stood outside the auditorium with my appeal documents, stopped by security. The sun was blazing that day, but all I felt was cold to the bone. I looked down at my hands. The backs were smooth, without the wounds I had earned from running appeals in my previous life. There was a bit of blue ink near my nail, smudged from yesterday's lab notes. From outside the door came the sound of the washroom, someone walking down the hallway with a basin, slippers slapping the floor. I was back to the day I discovered the theft. No, to be precise, back to 1 hour before Sue Man planned to steal my paper. On the bed across from me, Sue Man turned over and asked lazily, "Jixia, you're still up, finished revising the paper?" Her voice was drowsy, sounding like a casual concern from a normal roommate. Last time, I was fooled by her harmless act. I actually thought she cared, and foolishly replied, "Almost done, I'll show it to Professor Zhou tomorrow." Later, while I was in the shower, she copied all the files and data from my computer. The next morning, she was sitting in Zhou Mingyuan's office, holding my paper and claiming it was the result of 3 months of hard work. I looked at the eyes peeking through the gap in her bed and slowly smiled. "Soon," I said, "just a little more." Sue Man hummed in acknowledgement and then asked, "Are you going to see Professor Zhou tomorrow? I heard the department is recommending outstanding theses recently. Yours should have a good chance, right?" Every word she spoke sounded like casual small talk, yet each one hit the mark at just the right moment. I lowered my eyes and placed my right hand back on the mouse. "Who knows," I said calmly, "I've never been very lucky." Sue Man chuckled, "You're too modest. With all your hard work, there's no way you'll fail." In my past life, hearing those words would have warmed my heart. Now, they only disgust me. I ignored her and reopened my thesis file. Every paragraph, every set of data, every chart on the screen, I knew them so well I could recite them with my eyes closed. I had poured an entire year into this thesis, queuing up at dawn when the lab equipment was unavailable, rewriting code line by line when the data models wouldn't run, eating cold rice balls in the corner of the lab while others went out on weekends. I once believed that as long as I worked hard, my name would end up where it belonged. In my past life, reality slapped me hard. In this life, I'm not leaving fairness to others anymore. I opened the file manager and made a copy of the original thesis on my desktop. The truly complete version was exported to an encrypted hard drive and synced to a cloud-based evidence platform I only learned to use in my past life. I packed up the raw experimental data, screenshots of instrument reservations, code submission records, and scanned handwritten drafts. One by one, every file was timestamped, every step captured in a screenshot. Then I returned to the desktop, deleted the core algorithm derivation from the thesis, replaced key parameters, and altered 3 sets of experimental data. Finally, in an inconspicuous paragraph about model optimization, I left a flawed setting that would make the experiment impossible to replicate. The error was subtle, invisible on the surface. Anyone reading the text without actually running the experiment would easily assume it was reasonable, but if someone were asked to reproduce it during a thesis defense, they would inevitably fail. I saved the file and named it Final Thesis Draft, Lin Jixia, DGS. It looked just like a piece of meat placed right at the wolf's jaws. At 3:25 a.m., I closed my laptop. Before leaving with my pajamas and towel, I deliberately left the notebook on the desk. only closing the lid without shutting it down. As I passed Su Man's bed, I heard her breathing, too light, not like someone asleep. I didn't look back. Carrying my basin, I headed to the washroom. As the hot water poured down, I leaned against the wall, my palms drenched in cold sweat. I had appeared calm through all of that, but I knew I had nearly crushed the keyboard. Being reborn doesn't erase the pain, it just places the knife that once pierced your body back in front of your eyes. I turned off the water and slowly dried my face. In the mirror, my eyes were red, my lips pale, but unlike in my past life, there was no panic. Back then, Lin Jixia could only cry, only explain, only beg someone to look at the truth with her evidence in hand. Not this time, I don't want anyone's pity, I want them to spit out everything they stole, one by one. When I returned to the dorm, Su Man's bed curtains were already drawn tight, my computer screen was dark, but the indicator light on the external hard drive in the lower right corner had just gone out. I walked to the desk, didn't touch the computer right away, just hung up my towel. I opened my phone's background. The monitoring software had already popped up a record. At 3:31, someone touched the keyboard. At 3:33, desktop files were opened. At 3:35, an external USB drive was inserted. At 3:39, files were copied. At 3:40, the USB drive was removed. I stared at those lines and suddenly laughed out loud. From the bed came Su Man's groggy voice. Jixia, what are you laughing at? I flipped my phone face down on the desk, my tone light. Nothing, just thought of an interesting experiment. Su Man fell silent. I sat back in my chair and slowly opened the computer. The fake thesis was still sitting on the desktop, as if nothing had happened, but I knew the cage had already been opened, and the prey had walked right in. The next morning, I woke up later than usual. Su Man was already made up, wearing a cream-colored shirt, fixing her hair in front of the mirror. Seeing me awake, she smiled and said, Jixia, I'm heading to the library first. I glanced at the blue USB drive in her hand. In my past life, I would never forget that USB drive. It was what she used to steal a year of my work. I rubbed my eyes, acting like I knew nothing. So early? Yeah, I want to start preparing my thesis properly lately. She tucked the USB drive into her bag, her tone natural. Can't keep putting things off until the last minute. I nodded. Good luck. Su Man glanced at me, a quick look, part probing, part smug. She thought I hadn't noticed a thing. Good. After washing up, I took my time with breakfast, then headed to the lab building with my computer. Passing by the advisor's office, I saw the door open, and Su Man's sweet, soft voice came from inside. Professor Zhou, this is a draft of my thesis I've been working on recently. I'd like you to take a look. Zhou Mingyuan's voice came through the door, warm and approving. Su Man, this direction is great. You never mentioned your progress before, and now so quickly. Su Man laughed obediently. It's just a recent breakthrough, not quite polished yet. I was afraid you'd think I'm too hasty. Young people should boldly show their achievements, Zhou Mingyuan said. The department is currently promoting outstanding theses. If you polish this one a bit more, it has a good chance. I stood outside the door, my fingers tightening bit by bit. I had heard this conversation in my past life too, except back then, I had stormed in to confront them. I asked Su Man why she stole my thesis, asked Zhou Mingyuan why he didn't look at my original data, but Zhou Mingyuan's first words, frowning, were, Lin Jixia, calm down first, don't make a scene in the office. From that moment on, I had lost, because I was too impatient. Too chaotic, too much like an emotionally failure. This time, I didn't go in, I just stood outside the door, opened my phone's voice recorder, and captured their entire conversation. A few minutes later, Su Man came out. Seeing me, her expression shifted slightly, then quickly turned into a smile. Jixia, what are you doing here? I looked at her, looking for Professor Zhou. Su Man hoisted her bag onto her shoulder. Oh, go on in then, Professor Zhou is in a good mood. I nodded, as she walked past me. The scent of her perfume was strong. I knocked on the door. Zhou Mingyuan looked up and saw me, his smile not yet fully faded. Jixia, come in. I walked in and sat down across from him. On the desk lay a thesis cover printed by Su Man, with the author column reading, Su Man. I glanced at it and averted my eyes. Zhou Mingyuan flipped the thesis over, as if casually covering the cover. Looking for me about something, I said. Professor Zhou, it seems like someone has tampered with my thesis. His hand paused. What do you mean? A file on my computer was opened last night. I said. I suspect someone copied my thesis. Zhou Mingyuan didn't ask if I had evidence, nor did he ask what was lost. He just frowned, his tone becoming earnest and weighty. Jixia, you can't say things like that casually. We're all classmates, about to graduate. Don't ruin the harmony over a misunderstanding. In my past life, he was the same, always prioritizing harmony, never prioritizing the truth. I lowered my head, as if unsettled by his words. But this thesis is the result of a year's work. Zhou Mingyuan sighed. The teacher knows you've worked hard, but the department is currently evaluating for honors, and if a student accusation scandal breaks out now, it won't look good. Go back first and check again carefully. Maybe you just misremembered. I looked up at him. What if someone really did use my work? Zhou Mingyuan's tone remained gentle as he looked at me. Jixia, you're still young, don't narrow your path. The research circle is small, and reputation matters. These words were like a nail, driven through from my past life to this one. I suddenly wanted to ask him, doesn't my reputation matter? Can my path be blocked by others? But I didn't ask. I just slowly stood up and bowed to him. I understand, Professor Zhou. Zhou Mingyuan's expression relaxed. Good that you understand. You've always been sensible. The teacher has high hopes for you. Go back and refine your thesis further. Don't let your emotions affect you. Okay. I turned and left. The moment I closed the door, the phone's recording interface was still lit. I pressed save and renamed the file. First conversation recording with Zhou Mingyuan. The window at the end of the hallway was open, and the early summer wind poured in, making my eyes sting with emotion. But I didn't cry. In my past life, I cried too much. And by the end, no one listened. In this life, I only preserved the evidence. When I returned to the dormitory, Su Man was sitting at her desk tapping on her keyboard. When she saw me, she immediately switched the screen to a literature page. Fast, but not fast enough. I caught a glimpse of the very paper she had just opened, the one she had rewritten under her own name. What did Professor Zhou talk to you about? She asked with a smile. I put down my backpack. Nothing much. Just asking about my thesis progress. Oh, she said lightly. Professor Zhou seems pretty busy lately, with the department review and all. She deliberately brought this up. In my previous life, I couldn't help but confront her after that exact sentence. I asked if she had taken my thesis, and she immediately teared up, claiming I was wronging her. Chen Mian came back from outside and saw me pointing at Su Man, trembling, while Su Man was sobbing uncontrollably. From that day on, everyone in the dorm thought I was insane. This time, I just smiled. Yeah, everyone's busy. Su Man stared at me for a while, probably not seeing the breakdown she wanted, which made her a bit uneasy. I sat down, opened my laptop, and began typing code as usual. Actually, I wasn't editing the thesis anymore. I was compiling evidence, last night's file access records, USB insertion logs, front-facing camera action screenshots, all exported. I also logged into the lab system and downloaded the equipment reservation records from the past 3 months. Every reservation was under my name, and every data export time matched my handwritten logs. Then I opened the code repository. From the last appeal, I learned that commit history is far more convincing than any verbal explanation. Timestamps, authors, version diffs, every line was clear. I organized all the records into a table, the left column for time, the middle for events, and the right for evidence files. From the first proposal in September last year to the completion of the first draft this May, it totaled 172 entries. Looking at that table, my chest slowly loosened. In my previous life, I had all this too, but I thought of organizing it too late. By the time I reacted, my computer had been taken by the department for inspection, my account was frozen, my dorm had been searched, and even 2 of my draft notebooks were missing. This time, I won't let anyone touch my things. First, at 3 in the afternoon, the class group chat suddenly buzzed. The advisor posted a notice that the preliminary evaluation for the department's outstanding thesis had been moved up. First drafts were due by Monday. The group was filled with groans. Su Man immediately replied with a meme. Come on, everyone, it's the last stretch. Someone replied, you're probably set, right? Heard you've been going to your advisor's office every day. Su Man sent a shy emoji. Not really, I'm still far off. Professor Zhou just gave some casual pointers. A second later, she added, actually, a lot of ideas came from chatting with my roommate. You all helped me a lot. I stared at that line and couldn't help but laugh. She was laying the groundwork. First, chatting with roommates, then later she could say, my thesis was inspired by her, and eventually she could twist it to claim I was jealous of her results. The same pattern. I took a screenshot. When Chen Mian pushed the door open, she happened to catch me taking a screenshot. She froze for a moment. Jixia, why are you screenshotting the class group? I looked up at her. Chen Mian was another roommate, in my past life. She wasn't the one who harmed me, but she wasn't the one who helped me either. She had seen Su Man using my computer in the middle of the night and overheard Su Man saying on the phone, Lin Jixia is easy to fool, but when I needed a witness, she lowered her head and claimed she knew nothing. I hated her back then. Later, after experiencing more, I came to understand that the world isn't filled with bad people, but with people who don't want trouble. I couldn't expect everyone to be brave from the start, but I could let the evidence make the choice for them. I saved the record, just keeping a record. Chen Mian put down her bag and hesitated. Are you and Su Man having a conflict? Su Man happened to walk in from the balcony, drying her hands with an innocent smile. Who's having a conflict with whom? I have no idea. Chen Mian immediately shut up. I closed my laptop. No, we're about to graduate. Who has time for conflicts? Su Man's smile grew sweeter. Exactly, Jixia has been under too much pressure lately. I'm worried she'll burn out. As she spoke, she walked behind me and casually placed her hand on the back of my chair. How's your thesis coming along? Want me to take a look? My body instinctively tensed. After my computer was tampered with in my past life, I couldn't stand having anyone behind me for a long time. That feeling of having my things peeked at, taken, and renamed was like a cold hand gripping my throat. I pulled my laptop closer to me and looked up at her. No need. Su Man's smile stiffened. I was just trying to help. I know, I said. That's why I don't want to trouble you. The dorm fell silent for a few seconds. Chen Mian busied herself with organizing her clothes, pretending not to hear. Su Man let go of the chair back, her tone tinged with grievance. Jixia, do you have a problem with me? Here it came. Her specialty. If I said anything harsh, she'd get teary-eyed. Once she teared up, everyone around would think I was being aggressive. I swiveled my chair to face her. No, I don't. My tone was flat. I just think it's better to write a thesis yourself, don't you think? Su Man's face paled instantly, but she quickly forced a smile. Of course. She returned to her seat, and the force of her typing grew noticeably heavier. I stopped looking at her. That night, I logged into an off-campus academic forum. In my past life, after being expelled, I had used this forum to ask many questions about seeking justice, but by then it was too late, as much of the evidence had already disappeared. First, I registered an anonymous account to post. The title was, If Someone Copies a Research Paper Beforehand, How Can the Original Author Prove Ownership of the Work? The body was very short. No emotions, no accusations, just questions. 1. Can the timestamp of raw data prove ownership? 2. Can the code submission records and instrument reservation logs form a chain of evidence? 3. If the other party actively submits the paper after obtaining it, can that prove their use? 4. If the advisor is aware but asks to suppress the dispute, how should one preserve evidence? Half an hour after posting, there were many replies. Some suggested finding the student counselor, some said to call the police directly, and others advised not to make a big deal of it yet, as graduation was important. I looked at those replies without any ripple in my heart, until a new reply popped up. The username was Yen, and he only replied with one sentence, proving that you wrote it isn't enough, you need to prove that the other party couldn't have written it. I stared at that sentence for a long time, my fingers hovering over the screen, and suddenly felt as if a door had been knocked on. That statement was too precise. In my past life, I had always tried to prove that, this is mine, but Zhou Mingyuan and Su Man only needed to insist. She also participated in the discussion, to muddy the waters. What I needed to prove wasn't just that I wrote it, I also needed to prove that Su Man simply couldn't write it. I clicked on the person's profile. The bio had only one line, data model reproduction, scientific research project review. I sent a private message. If the other party has already obtained a flawed version, should I immediately prevent them from using it? He replied 10 minutes later. No. I typed, why? He replied, let them use it. I looked at those 3 words and slowly raised the corners of my mouth. This person understood. He wasn't advising me to endure, he was telling me to nail down the evidence of their active use. I replied, what if the use leads to a greater impact? He said, the greater the impact, the clearer the responsibility, provided you can control the risk. I thought for a moment and sent a small segment of non-core data and a redacted list of evidence with names removed. Is this enough? Half an hour later, he replied, not enough. Then he sent a list, file. Creation records, external device records, access path screenshots, code version differences, raw data hash values, the other party's submission receipt, and the advisor's knowledge record. The last line read, "The materials you sent are real, but you don't fully trust me." I paused, staring at the screen. This person was frighteningly perceptive. I replied, "I only trust evidence." He quickly responded, "Very good. In scientific research, the last thing you should trust is people." I suddenly smiled. This really sounded like something I would say after being reborn. That night, I spent until dawn organizing the materials. Sue Man got up in the middle of the night to get water and deliberately glanced at my screen as she passed behind me. I didn't hide it. The screen showed what looked like a simple revised draft of an opening report. The real evidence materials were on an encrypted drive. After looking, Sue Man yawned reassuringly. "Jixia, don't push yourself too hard. What if the final outcome isn't what you expected? How awful would that be?" I saved the file and said calmly, "It doesn't matter." "What doesn't matter?" I looked up at her. "The outcome will meet expectations, just not the ones he expects." On the day of the outstanding thesis pre-evaluation, Sue Man dressed beautifully, in a white shirt, a light blue skirt, her hair down, and clean makeup, looking exactly like a fresh and polished academic rising star. She stood in front of the dorm mirror, turned around, and asked Chen Mian, "Is this too formal?" Chen Mian said, "It looks fine." Sue Man then turned to me, "Lin Jixia, what do you think?" I was sorting out my own materials without looking up. "It doesn't bother me." Her smile froze. Chen Mian cleared her throat. Sue Man quickly regained her composure. "Are you coming to sit in on it today?" "Yes, that's great." She walked over to me with an intimate tone. "Help me listen to what the teachers say, and we can revise it together afterward." I stopped what I was doing, looked up at her, and said, "Your thesis, why should I revise it with you?" Sue Man blinked, immediately putting on a hurt expression. "Lin Jixia, that's not what I meant. I just think we talk a lot, and some ideas were inspired by each other." She was at it again, first calling, taking, as inspiration, then calling, taking over, as collaboration. I closed my folder. "Sue Man, inspiration and authorship are two different things." The room fell silent instantly. Chen Mian's hand holding the cup froze in midair. Sue Man's eyes reddened quickly. "Are you still blaming me?" "But, I really don't know what I did to upset you. In my past life, just like this, everyone would turn to me, as if I were the one being aggressive. This time, I didn't play along. I just picked up my bag. Let's go. The pre-evaluation is about to start." The pre-evaluation was held in the small lecture hall on the third floor of the college building. A few teachers sat in the audience. Along with about a dozen students sitting in, Zhou Mingyuan sat in the front row, whispering with another teacher. When he saw Sue Man walk in, he gave her an encouraging smile. When he saw me, his smile faded slightly. I found a seat on the far side in the last row, sat down, and turned on my voice recorder. Sue Man was the fifth to go up. She stood by the projector screen, her voice clear. "Good morning, teachers. My thesis is titled, Research on Outlier Detection Model Optimization Based on Multimodal Sensing Data." As soon as she announced the topic, people in the audience glanced at me. Everyone in the class knew this was originally my direction, since I'd practically lived in the lab for the past year, but Sue Man acted as if she didn't notice those looks and continued. She talked about the research background, the model design, the experimental results. Much of it was what I had written, and even one slide's graph axis format was identical to my original draft. My fingertips went cold, not from fear, but from disgust. In my past life, I stood up and confronted her. At this exact moment, I said, "That's my graph." Sue Man burst into tears right there. Zhou Mingyuan frowned and told me to leave and calm down, and from then on, everyone said, "Lin Jixia is unbalanced. She can't stand her roommate being better than her." This time, I sat perfectly still. After Sue Man finished speaking, a teacher surnamed Lu flipped through the materials and asked, "In your model optimization, why did you set the third set of parameters to 0.72? Did you conduct any comparative experiments?" Sue Man's smile stiffened slightly. "This is an empirical value obtained after multiple rounds of debugging." Teacher Lu pressed on, "How many rounds of debugging? Do you have records?" Sue Man paused for a second. "The records are in the original experimental logs. I didn't bring them all today." Zhou Mingyuan interjected, "An undergraduate achieving this level is already impressive. The completeness can be supplemented later." Teacher Lu nodded without further inquiry. I lowered my eyes and wrote in my notebook, first cross-examination, unable to answer, then another teacher asked, what was your experimental environment, how was the data source cleaned? This time, Su Man struggled more. She could recite the sentences from her paper but couldn't explain why each step was taken, because those nights sitting in the lab cleaning data were mine, not hers. A few students in the audience began whispering, isn't Su Man working on this direction? Wasn't Lin Jixia running this before? Maybe they did it together. I heard it but said nothing. This wasn't enough. I couldn't let Su Man stumble in a small arena. I wanted her to reach a higher platform, where everyone could see her. After the preliminary evaluation, Su Man ranked second. Zhou Mingyuan looked displeased but still comforted her. It's okay, the teachers just want your materials to be more detailed. Go back and fill in the experimental records. Su Man nodded obediently. Thank you, Teacher Zhou. I'll revise it properly. Her gaze swept over me, and in that instant, the obedience in her eyes vanished, replaced by resentment. I acted as if I hadn't seen it, packed up my notebook, and left. Just as I reached the stairwell, my phone vibrated. A forum private message. Yen, was there a preliminary evaluation today? I stopped in my tracks. I hadn't told him the specific time. He must have inferred it from the materials I uploaded last night. I replied, yeah. Yen, how did the other side perform? I replied, 2 stumbles. Yen, not enough. Yen, have him submit a paper or do a public presentation. I stood in the stairwell, looking down at these words. I had the same intention. Back in the dormitory, Su Man sat on a chair with red-rimmed eyes, while Chen Mian was comforting her. The teacher wasn't dismissing you, maybe they were just being thorough. Su Man wiped the corner of her eye. I know, but I really tried hard. I'm not like some people. Everyone discusses things together, but in the end, it seems like only one person did all the hard work. She nearly pointed her finger at me. Chen Mian glanced at me awkwardly. I put down my bag, opened my water bottle, and took a sip. Su Man suddenly turned to me, her voice choked with tears. Jixia, do you think I did poorly today? She wanted me to deny it. If I said, no, she could follow up with, then help me supplement the materials. If I said, yes, she could keep crying. I put down the water. Do you want to hear the truth? Su Man froze. I said, it wasn't bad, you recited it quite smoothly, but you'd better complete the original experimental logs, or next time a teacher asks. Su Man's face shifted. Are you reminding me, or mocking me? I looked at her. Whatever you think it is, that's what it is. Her tears fell immediately. Chen Mian quickly said, all right, let's both say less. I ignored her. That evening, someone in the class group chat posted a call for papers from an off-campus academic conference, and the theme happened to align with our direction. Su Man quickly asked in the group, can undergraduates submit? Someone replied, probably. Hasn't Teacher Zhou encouraged everyone to try before? Su Man sent a fist emoji. Then I'll give it a try. It's good practice anyway. I looked at that sentence and slowly put down my phone. The bait was taken. Half an hour later, the forum private message lit up again. Yen, if he submits the paper, keep the submission receipt and version differences. I replied, how do I keep them? Yen, he'll show off. I couldn't help but smile at the screen. True, Su Man, once she gets something, can't resist letting the whole world know. Sure enough, the next day at noon, she posted a screenshot of her computer on Moments, captioned, first independent submission, hope for good results. In the screenshot, she covered most of the content, but the bottom right of the submission system page, file name, submission time, was fully exposed. She probably thought those details were irrelevant. My fingers were eerily steady as I saved the screenshot. Su Man didn't know that every time she showed off, she was adding bricks to my foundation. That night, Yen sent me an email address for the first time, not through the forum private message. He said, if you're willing, you can send non-core materials over, and I'll help you review the evidence chain. I stared at that email, hesitating for a long time. In my past life, I trusted others too much, trusted my advisor to uphold justice, trusted the school to uncover the truth, trusted my classmates to tell the truth. But every trust turned into a knife. I only selected a third of the peripheral materials to send, 1 file access record, 1 screenshot of code submission, and 1 equipment reservation list. No raw data, no core algorithms, and certainly no complete paper. Half an hour later, he replied, the materials are logically clear but can't directly prove the other party's use. Wait for the submission result. Then came another line, "You're very cautious. This is a good thing." I looked at the words, and a certain tense spot in my heart eased slightly, no questioning why I didn't trust, no demanding all my materials, just acknowledging my caution. That kind of respect was more reassuring than any comfort. At 1 a.m., I was still organizing the evidence table. Suddenly, my phone rang. A delivery call. "Hello. There's a delivery for you at the school gate. The dorm won't let us in." I froze. I didn't order anything. The other party recited my name and phone number. I threw on a coat and went downstairs. The delivery bag at the school gate contained a bowl of hot congee, a box of food, and a small pack of stomach medicine. On the note, it read, "Evidence is important, but don't collapse first," signed with just one character, Yen. I stood in the night breeze, holding that bowl of congee, suddenly torn between laughter and tears. This person was really strange, speaking coldly like a lab instrument, yet remembering when I mentioned a bit of low blood sugar while sending materials at night. I brought the congee back to the dorm. Su-man wasn't asleep yet. She smelled the aroma and leaned over from her bed. "Ji Xia, who ordered this for you?" I picked up the spoon and took a slow sip. "A collaborator." Su-man's face shifted slightly. "What collaborator?" I looked up at her, smiled. "You'll find out later." Su-man's submission receipt arrived 3 days later. She posted on Moments almost immediately, received notice of initial review approval, continuing to work hard. The title of the paper and the accompanying image was crystal clear. This time, she hadn't even properly covered the author column. First author, Su-man, supervisor, Zhou Mingyuan. I saved the screenshot, backed it up along with the web page source code and timestamp. Then I logged into the school's research management system and submitted a formal application, materials explanation statement on disputed authorship of undergraduate thesis achievements. The submission wasn't just directed at Zhou Mingyuan, it also went to the college's teaching office, the academic affairs office, and the research office. In my past life, I only went through my advisor's line, so Zhou Mingyuan could shut me down in his office with a single, "Don't make a fuss." This time, I wasn't taking a single path from the start. I wanted every link to leave a trace. After the application was submitted, the system automatically generated a case number. I took a screenshot and saved it. Only after all this did I go find Zhou Mingyuan. A green pothose plant sat in his office, and a row of trophies lined the windowsill. In my past life, I had deeply respected him. I thought he was gentle, patient, and willing to give undergraduates a chance. Only later did I realize that some gentleness is just a facade. A blade doesn't have to be sharp and exposed. It can also be hidden in a phrase like, "It's for your own good." Lin Jixia, you submitted a dispute application. Zhou Mingyuan sat behind his desk, his tone still gentle, but his brow was furrowed. I nodded, yes. He set down the documents in his hand. "Why didn't you discuss it with your advisor first?" "I did discuss it," I said. "The last time I came to see you, you told me to go back and calm down." Zhou Mingyuan's face stiffened. "I told you to calm down, not to bypass me and submit materials." I looked at him. The school's procedures don't require a student to obtain their advisor's approval before filing a research integrity dispute. He paused for 2 seconds. "Lin Jixia, why are you being so aggressive now?" I didn't respond to that. Zhou Mingyuan sighed, softening his tone. "Your advisor knows you've been under a lot of pressure lately, but have you thought about this? If this blows up, you, Su-man, and the entire research group will all be affected. The department's annual evaluation is crucial this year. You can't just think about yourself. Just think about yourself." Those 4 words were painfully familiar. In my past life, my paper was stolen, my future was ruined, and I was still told not to just think about myself. My hands, resting on my knees, slowly clenched and then loosened. "Professor Zhou, I just want to confirm the ownership of my work." "Ownership of your work isn't something you can clarify with a single statement." His tone grew heavier. "Research is about teamwork. You and Su-man share a dorm, so it's normal to exchange ideas. Her work has already been submitted. And now you're jumping out saying someone stole yours. What will outsiders think?" I looked at him. "So, your point is, if she submits first, it's hers." Zhou Mingyuan's face darkened. "Lin Jixia, don't twist your advisor's words." I stood up and pulled a file from my bag. "Please sign a copy of my materials." He didn't take it. "What's this?" "My raw data directory, code submission records, instrument booking logs, and paper version notes." I said, "I've already uploaded it to the system. This copy is just for you to keep." Zhou Mingyuan stared at the file, his expression shifting for the first time. He probably hadn't expected me to come prepared this time, let alone have my materials organized to this extent. After a long moment, he said, "Leave it here for now." I placed the file on the desk. "All right." As I turned to leave, he suddenly called out, "Jixia." I stopped. His tone became gentle again, even with a hint of weary elder-like concern. "Let me remind you one more time, young people shouldn't burn bridges. If you escalate this now, future graduate school applications, job searches, and recommendations will all carry a record of this. Have you really thought it through?" I turned back to look at him. The last time, those words had scared me. I was afraid it would affect my graduation, my grad school applications, that I'd be labeled as troublesome. But what did I gain in the end? I didn't make a fuss. And I didn't keep anything either, I said softly, Professor Zhou. In my past life, no, I mean, before, I thought too much, and that's why I lost everything. Zhou Mingyuan didn't catch the slip, but I smiled and said, "I've thought it through." As I left the office, I saved the audio recording on my phone. File name, second conversation recording with Zhou Mingyuan. In the afternoon, I received an automated reply from the research office. "Your materials have been accepted and will be forwarded to the department for verification." It sounded official, but it actually meant the process had begun. Just as I let out a sigh of relief, the class group chat exploded. Someone had posted anonymously on the campus forum, with the title, "Some people can't write their own thesis, so they want to ruin those who have a spot for graduate recommendation." How disgusting. The post didn't name anyone, but every word pointed at me, saying I was jealous of Su Man, that I always pretended to be hardworking, that I was resentful after Su Man got favored by the advisor. And even that, I always type on my keyboard late at night to deliberately disturb my roommate. Soon, replies followed. "Is it that Lin, someone from the School of Information? I heard she's been telling people that her roommates stole her thesis. Any evidence?" The evidence is the accusation itself. Doing this right before graduation is terrifying. I stared at the words, a wave of nausea rising in my stomach. It was the same in my past life. Before the investigation even began, public opinion had already convicted me. Back then, I frantically replied to each comment. The more flustered I got, the more I tried to explain, and the more I explained, the more it sounded like a guilty defense. This time, I just took screenshots, every floor, every ID, every edit timestamp, all saved. Chen Mian's face looked uneasy. She had probably seen the post too. She stood at the door and whispered, "Jixia, that forum post." Su Man immediately looked up, her eyes red again. "I saw it too. I don't know who posted it, but why would everyone say that about Jixia? Have you told someone something?" I turned to her. "Do you think I asked everyone to attack me?" Su Man bit her lip. "That's not what I mean. I just feel like, can't we talk this out properly? Submitting a dispute like this makes me really uncomfortable." "You're uncomfortable?" I asked. A tear fell from her cheek. "Yes, I worked so hard on this. And with just one word from you, everything gets doubted. Now the teacher has called me in for questioning, and the forum is in chaos. I really don't know what I did wrong." I nodded. "Then let's have it investigated." Su Man froze. "What? If you've done nothing wrong, let the school find out," I said, looking at her. "If this is a false accusation against you, I'll accept the punishment, but if you used my work, you'll take the consequences too." "Fair." The dorm went dead silent. Su Man's lips trembled for a long time, unable to speak. Chen Mian lowered her head, fidgeting with her backpack strap, her face even paler. At that moment, I knew she was starting to realize something was off. Truly innocent people have no reason to fear an investigation. At 10 p.m., Yen sent a link. "Your material structure is fine, but if you want to prove the research value, you need a third-party platform for non-public replication." I stared at the line, alarm bells ringing in my head. Third-party platform replication meant I'd have to hand over my core results. I replied, "I won't submit the full text." He responded quickly, "No need." Then he sent a 3-tier plan. First, upload only test data without retaining the original text. Second, black box verification that only outputs results. Third, remote demonstration with full screen recording, where the platform only provides a timestamp and performance report. I stared at those 3 options, and the wariness in me slowly eased. He wasn't forcing me to give up my core, he was giving me choices. I asked, "Who are you?" This time, he paused for a few minutes before replying, "Shen Yan, project lead at Mingchuan Research Platform." graduated from your school's information engineering department in the previous competition cohort. My fingers trembled. I'd heard that name in my past life. After Sue Man stole my paper, she attended an off-campus conference where a reviewer publicly questioned her experimental results being irreproducible. That reviewer was Shen Yan. Back then, I'd already been expelled from school and couldn't even enter the venue. I only saw him later in a recording, young, aloof, asking questions that cut to the chase, but at that time, Sue Man had Zhou Mingyuan backing her, and the college endorsed her, so Shen Yan's doubts fizzled out. I never expected him to appear before me so early in this life. I replied, "How can I trust you?" Shen Yan answered, "Don't trust me. Look at the contract, the permissions, the process." The next second, he sent a platform testing agreement. Template, authorship rights, data ownership, confidentiality clauses, log retention, deletion mechanisms, all written clearly. I read through it page by page, and suddenly found myself at a loss for words. In my past life, when I handed my results to my advisor, there was no contract, no permission explanation, no protection at all. Just "I'm your teacher" was enough for me to trust. It turns out that someone who truly respects you won't demand blind trust. They'll lay out the rules and give you an escape route. I replied, "I choose the third option, remote demonstration." Shen Yan, "All right, tomorrow at 8 p.m., I stared at the screen and slowly typed a line. "Shen Yan, I'm not here to ask for your help," he replied quickly. "I know, then why are you helping me?" This time, he took a long pause before answering, "I'm not helping a victim." The next line popped up, "I'm watching a researcher, to see if she can take back what's hers." I stared at that sentence, and my eyes suddenly felt hot. From the moment I was reborn until now, I'd heard so many things. People told me to endure, to consider the bigger picture, that I was too sensitive, or asked why I had to make a fuss. Only he said, a researcher, not a nuisance, not an outlier, not a clueless student, a researcher. I turned off my phone and looked out the window. The streetlight below the dormitory was on, tree shadows swaying in the wind. This time, I was no longer standing alone outside the door. The next evening at 8 p.m., I logged into the Mingchuan Research Platform's remote meeting on time. Shen Yan didn't turn on his camera, only his voice and the platform's test interface appeared on the screen. "Can you hear me?" His voice was lower and calmer than I remembered. I said, "Yes." "First, confirm the agreement," he said. "Today, we're only doing black box testing and screen recording, no retention of your original text. After the test, you can request the platform to delete temporary data." I nodded. "Okay." "Don't just nod," he said. "Read aloud the clause you care about most." I was taken aback. His tone was flat. "Aren't you distrustful? Then confirm the text." I looked at the screen and suddenly smiled. This guy was cold but polite. I read the data confidentiality clause and deletion mechanism word for word. He said, "Let's begin." For the next 3 hours, I ran the real model, not the old version Sue Man had stolen, but the upgraded one I had developed based on my past life's experience. After being fired last time, I didn't give up on research right away. For a long time, I delivered food during the day and searched for information online at night, continuing to tweak the model on open-source platforms. I had no lab, no advisor, and certainly no classmates, but I refused to give in. I always felt that if that paper hadn't been stolen, my life wouldn't have turned out that way. Later, I came up with a better direction, but by then, I no longer had the qualifications to submit papers or the platform to verify them. Now, everything is still possible. When the test results came out, Shen Yan was silent for a long time. I stared at the screen, thinking something was wrong. "Mr. Shen," he finally spoke, "this is not at the level of an undergraduate thesis. Can it not be used?" "No," he said, "it's too usable." I froze. The test report on the screen showed that the model's recognition accuracy in 3 sets of anomalous data scenarios was nearly 12% higher than the platform's current baseline. Shen Yan said, "This direction of yours can be developed into an independent project, not just used to prove who stole your paper." I looked at those lines of data, and something lit up inside me. In my past life, I was always trapped in the mindset of, I need to prove I didn't plagiarize. But after being reborn, for the first time, I clearly saw that the path I could take was not limited to just one. I wasn't just capable of reclaiming what was mine, I could also create something new. Shen Yan sent me the test report. The platform can issue a timestamp certificate and a performance verification report. If you're willing, I formally invite you to join the Mingchuan short-term project team as an independent researcher. The words, independent researcher, landed in my ears, heavier than any comfort. I asked, aren't you afraid of trouble? I'm still in the school's objection process, Shen Yan said. The trouble is the flawed process. Not you. My hand, holding the mouse, stopped. The video conference was completely silent. I looked down at my lab notebook. It was densely filled with data, formulas, and error corrections I had written in my past life. No one was willing to look at these. They only saw who stood on stage first, who had an advisor backing them, and who cried more like a victim. Now, finally, someone saw. I said, I need to think about it. You can, Shen Yan said, but don't take too long. Your opponent won't wait for you. I smiled slightly. He's not my opponent. Shen Yan paused for 2 seconds. Then what is he? I closed my lab notebook. He's part of the evidence. The next day, the college called me in for a talk. Not Zhou Mingyuan, but Teacher Li from the Academic Affairs Office and the counselor. The conversation took place in a small meeting room, with the materials I had submitted laid out on the table. Teacher Li looked a bit troubled. Lin Jixia, we've reviewed the situation you submitted. You claim that Su Man used your thesis work, but given that your research directions are similar, your roommates, and you might have discussed things regularly, it's hard to draw a clear line. I said, I submitted a timeline and original materials. The counselor cleared his throat. Jixia, it's not that we don't believe you, but graduation is near, and blowing this up won't do either of you any good. Su Man says she often discussed things with you. Could you be confusing things? I looked at him. Teacher, is discussing the same as copying files? The counselor's expression turned awkward. Teacher Li flipped through the materials. You mentioned there are file access records, but that requires technical verification. Fine, I said, I request the school's information center to get involved. Teacher Li looked up at me. Are you sure? I nodded. I'm sure. In my past life, I backed down at this point. They said, verification is troublesome, so I explained myself. They said, the evidence isn't complete. So I scrambled to add more. They said, don't affect your graduation, so I held back, until everyone thought I was guilty. This time, they want verification, so I'll let them verify. The counselor softened his tone. Jixia, are you under too much pressure lately? Maybe talk to a counselor first. I smiled. There it was, in my past life. They turned every complaint into a psychological issue. I slid a printed document across the table. This is a non-public test report I did on an external platform last night. Timestamped, the test model differs from the one in Su Man's submitted thesis. It's an upgraded version based on my original direction. Teacher Li took it, and his expression slowly changed. Though he wasn't in this field, he recognized the platform endorsement. Mingchuan Research Platform, he asked. This is. The counselor also leaned in to look. I said, I'm not here to argue. I'm just asking the school to follow the standard research process for verification. The small meeting room fell silent for a long time. Finally, Teacher Li said, we'll forward these materials to the college's academic committee. I nodded. Please give me a written reply. Teacher Li looked at me with a complicated expression. Lin Jixia, you came very prepared, I said, because I can't afford not to. Stepping out of the meeting room, I ran into Su Man in the hallway. She had clearly just been called in for a talk too. Her eyes were red, and she was clutching a tissue. Seeing me, she stopped immediately. Lin Jixia, what exactly do you want? I looked at her. To get to the bottom of it, are you trying to destroy me? Her voice was low and trembling. I've worked so hard to get here. Teacher Zhou said this thesis just needs a few more revisions to be an outstanding graduation thesis, and it'll secure my graduate school recommendation. Why can't you just let me go? I almost laughed. She stole from me, and she's asking why I won't let her go. Su Man stepped forward. You say you've worked hard to get here. Have you ever thought that I've worked hard too? Her eyes flickered. I don't know what you're talking about. You will. I walked past her. Behind me, she suddenly said, do you think having evidence guarantees you'll win? Lin Jixia, the school doesn't like troublemakers, and Teacher Zhou won't side with you. I stopped. In my past life, she stood before me crying, claiming innocence, only to whisper in my ear later, no one will believe you. I turned to look at him. It doesn't matter. He was stunned. What doesn't matter? I said. This time, I don't need him on my side. I just need him on the side of the evidence. 3 days after the preliminary evaluation by the Academy, Su Man's thesis was officially recommended for the public defense of outstanding theses. Zhou Mingyuan personally sent a notice in the group, asking everyone to come and observe. Su Man replied in the group, "Thank you, Professor Zhou. I will continue to work hard." Below were a series of congratulations. Some said, Man is amazing, others said, our dorm is producing a top student, and some even made snide remarks, don't be sour, if you're capable, do it yourself. I didn't reply to any of them, I just circled the time of the public defense, May 22nd, 9 a.m., I've been waiting for this day for a long time. That evening, Shen Yan asked me, for the public defense, what are you planning to do? I replied, submit the materials on the spot, the academy might not let you finish, I know. Do you need an external reviewer present? Reading this, my heart suddenly raced, can you come? He replied, I'm already on the invitation list. Mingchuan has a collaborative project with your academy. I froze. In my previous life, Shen Yan questioned Su Man at an off-campus conference. In this life, he would appear early at the public defense venue. Fate, like a string being plucked anew, had finally veered off its original course. I replied, you don't have to reveal the truth for me, Shen Yan, I know. The next sentence came quickly, I'll only fight for the process that lets you speak the truth. I held my phone, unable to move for a long time. This sentence was more reassuring to me than, I'll help you, because what I feared most was never that I couldn't speak, but that no one would let me. The night before the public defense, I couldn't sleep. After the dorm lights went out, the hallway was quiet, only the occasional drip of a faucet in the distance breaking the silence. Lying in bed with my eyes closed, I returned to the auditorium of my past life. Through the glass door, Su Man, in her graduation gown, smiled as she accepted the outstanding graduate certificate. With Zhou Mingyuan applauding in the front row, I pounded on the door, shouting that the thesis was mine, but the security guard frowned and stopped me. Student, you're no longer enrolled here, you can't go in. No longer enrolled. Those words cut like a knife. I snapped my eyes open, my palms drenched in sweat. Below my bed, Su Man turned over in her sleep. She was well rested, ready to accept her stolen glory tomorrow. I climbed down, turned on my small desk lamp, and opened the lab notebook. The first page held the topic proposal from last September, the handwriting still a bit messy. Back then, I didn't know this path would be so difficult, nor that human hearts would be harder to handle than data. I flipped through page by page. Each one was proof of my existence, something no one's accusation of plagiarism could erase. My phone screen lit up. Shen Yan had sent a file, suggested order for material submission at defense site. I opened it. First, make a procedural request, not a direct accusation. Second, request it be recorded. Third, present the timeline of achievement attribution. Fourth, show the error parameters in the other party's version. Fifth, replicate the differences on site. Sixth, request the initiation of a research integrity check. The last line he wrote, you aren't coming empty-handed. I stared at those words, my breath slowly steadying. I double-checked all my materials, recorder, USB drive, evidence list, lab notebook, off-campus platform test report, submission screenshots, file access records, everything in order. The next morning, the dormitory atmosphere was strange. Su Man got up very early, put on full makeup, wore that white shirt with a light gray blazer over it, looking like she was going to receive an award. Chen Mian glanced at her, then at me, her lips moving several times before she finally said, good luck to both of you. Su Man smiled gently, thanks, Mian. Then she looked at me, Lin Jixia, you're going too, right? I put the documents into my bag. Yes. She walked up to me and lowered her voice, Lin Jixia, with so many teachers here today, you'd better not cause any trouble. I looked up, what are you afraid of? Her face stiffened, I'm afraid you'll lose control again and embarrass everyone. I smiled, don't worry. The one who'll be embarrassed today won't be me. The defense was arranged in the college's main lecture hall. When I arrived, many students were already seated inside. In the front rows sat the defense committee members and college leaders. Zhou Mingyuan was sitting next to the judges' seats, flipping through materials with his head down. I spotted Shen Yan at once. He was sitting in the external reviewer's seat, wearing a black shirt and gray jacket, his profile cold and sharp, holding a pen in his hand. Just like in the screen recording from my past life, young, sharp, not the type to waste words. When he looked up, he happened to see me. We didn't greet each other. He just let his gaze fall on the document bag in my hand and gave a slight nod. It meant, glad you brought it. After the defense began, the first few students went smoothly. When it was Su Man's turn, the presiding teacher introduced her with a smile. Next up is Sue Man, the candidate for the outstanding graduation thesis recommended by the School of Information Engineering. Applause rose from the audience. Sue Man walked onto the stage with a generous smile. She opened her PowerPoint, and when the title of the first page appeared, I heard someone in the back row whisper, "That's the one where Lin Jixia was there too. Are they going to fight again today?" I didn't turn around. Sue Man began her presentation. She spoke much more fluently than during the preliminary evaluation. Clearly, Zhou Mingyuan had helped her polish it. The parts she couldn't answer before had been rephrased into vague statements, the parameter settings that originally required detailed explanations had become the optimal range obtained through multiple rounds of experiments. The data cleaning process that needed clear elaboration had become, following the existing procedures of the research group. The term research group was used too cleverly. As long as it became the research group's achievement, my name could be diluted away. When Sue Man reached the last page, her voice rose slightly. "I would like to thank Professor Zhou Mingyuan for his careful guidance. And also my roommates. We often discuss things together, and many of my inspirations come from our daily exchanges. Research is not a solitary battle but the result of mutual support." Someone in the audience applauded. She looked at me, a victor's smile hidden in her eyes. I slowly raised my head and smiled back at her. Next came the Q&A session. A teacher asked, "You mentioned earlier that multiple rounds of experiments led to the optimal range. Could you show the comparison results under different parameters?" Sue Man had already flipped to the appendix page. "Here are some comparisons." The teacher looked for a moment. "Why is the section from 0.68 to 0.71 missing?" Sue Man paused. "The data in that range didn't fluctuate much, so I didn't include it." Shen Yan suddenly spoke up. "It's not that it didn't fluctuate much, it's that you couldn't get stable results, right?" The entire room fell silent. Sue Man's expression shifted slightly. Zhou Mingyuan immediately said, "Teacher Shen, this is just an undergraduate thesis. There's no need to hold it to the standards of an engineering project." Shen Yan looked at him, his tone flat. "I'm asking about the experimental results, not the student status." Murmurs arose from the audience. Sue Man gripped the clicker, forcing a smile. "I can supplement this part when I get back." Shen Yan flipped through the materials. "In your thesis, the core parameter in Chapter 3, Section 2 is set at 0.72. How was this value derived?" Sue Man opened her mouth. "Through multiple rounds of debugging." "Which rounds?" "Testing on different data numbers." Sue Man's face turned pale. Zhou Mingyuan's expression also darkened. "Teacher Shen, time is limited. These details can be discussed later." Shen Yan didn't look at him, only at the defense chair. "If the core parameter can't be explained, it affects the validity of the thesis." The defense chair frowned. "Student Sue Man, can you answer?" Sue Man's eyes reddened, and she suddenly looked at me. "Actually, part of this foundational work, classmate Lin Jixia also participated. We discussed it quite a bit back then, and some details might be clearer from her end." Finally, he dragged me into it. "In my past life, that's exactly what he did. First, discussion, then, collaboration, then me, backtracking and trying to steal his results. This time, I was waiting for that very sentence." I raised my hand. "Teacher, I request to speak." Zhou Mingyuan sharply turned to me. "Lin Jixia, this is Sue Man's defense time. Don't disrupt the order." I stood up, my voice low but clear. "Student Sue Man just publicly stated that the core content of the thesis is related to me. As the party mentioned, I request to submit materials regarding the dispute over the attribution of results and ask for them to be recorded." The room erupted instantly. The defense chair frowned. "Isn't the college already looking into this matter?" I said. "Yes, but the version Sue Man submitted today still uses the core results I claim ownership of, and she just actively involved me. To avoid missing materials later, I request to submit them on the spot." Zhou Mingyuan stood up. "Lin Jixia, don't bring personal conflicts into a public defense." I looked at him. "Teacher Zhou, disputes over research results are not personal conflicts." His face turned ashen. At that moment, Shen Yan put down his pen. "According to research protocol, when a party is publicly mentioned and claims ownership, they have the right to submit materials. I suggest pausing the current defense to receive the materials." The lecture hall was so quiet you could hear the air conditioning. The defense chair glanced at the college leaders, then at Shen Yan. Finally, he said, "Student Lin Jixia, you may submit your materials, but please keep it brief and give a concise explanation first." I walked up to the stage carrying a file bag. As I passed Sue Man, She whispered, "You're crazy." I paused for a second, not looking at her. In my past life, I was crazy once. This time, not anymore. She didn't understand. Her face just grew paler. I stood in front of the projection screen and inserted my USB drive. The first slide opened, titled, "Explanation of Materials Regarding the Attribution of Results in Student Sue Man's Defense Thesis." Someone in the audience gasped. I held the clicker and looked at everyone. "Good afternoon, teachers. I am Lin Jixia. Today, I am not here to make emotional accusations, only to present evidence." The first page is a timeline, from the topic proposal in last September to the completion of the first draft in early May this year, with corresponding evidence numbers attached to each milestone. I said, "This is my complete record of completing this research direction, including the proposal draft, handwritten lab notes, timestamps of raw data exports, code commit history, and experimental instrument reservation records." The second page is a screenshot of instrument reservations, densely covered with my name. I heard someone in the audience whisper, "That many? He really ran it for a year." The third page is the code repository commit history. Every modification comes with a specific time and difference. I said, "Here you can see that the core structure of the model began taking shape in November last year, major optimizations were completed in March this year, and result validation was done in April." Sue Man stood beside me, her face growing paler. Zhou Mingyuan suddenly spoke up, "Lin Jixia, these only prove you worked on a similar direction, not that Sue Man's paper is yours." I looked at him. "Then please look at the next page." The next page is the file access record. At 3:31 a.m., on May 13th, the paper file on my desktop was opened. At 3:35 a.m., an external USB drive was inserted. At 3:39 a.m., the file was copied. I didn't name names but said, "This is the system log from my computer that day," because there was an earlier file anomaly in my dormitory. I had enabled access monitoring. The defense chair asked, "Can you prove who held the USB drive?" I clicked to the next page, a copy of the request for dormitory hallway surveillance footage, along with the access records from that night showing entries and exits from the dorm. I don't have surveillance inside the dorm, but I have access records and system access times. The school's information center can follow up by cross-referencing the external device IDs. Sue Man said, "You were monitoring me." I looked at her. "I was monitoring my computer." Someone in the audience let out a laugh, then quickly stifled it. I continued flipping pages. The next page was a screenshot of Sue Man's WeChat moments. On May 16th, Sue Man submitted this paper to an off-campus conference. The title matched my original paper. The author column read Sue Man, and the advisor was Zhou Mingyuan. I didn't look at Zhou Mingyuan, but I knew everyone else was watching him. His face had turned grimly unguarded. Lin Jixia, bringing a student's WeChat moments to a defense session, that's inappropriate, isn't it? I said, if the content involves disputed achievements, and the submission time is public, I believe it is appropriate. Shen Yan lowered his head, jotted down a note, and said nothing. I turned to the most critical page. Below it was the core parameter issue and the version submitted by Sue Man. Two sets of model results appeared on the screen. On the left, the parameters from Sue Man's paper. On the right, my original parameters. I said, in Sue Man's paper, the parameter in Chapter 3, Section 2 is set at 0.72. This value came from the decoy version on my desktop, not the final experimental result. The room immediately erupted in uproar. Sue Man's face turned ashen. "You're lying." I ignored her and directly opened the on-site reproduction program. I'll now use the same test dataset to run both versions separately. The program began running on the screen. After about 10 seconds, the results on the left showed heavy fluctuations. Recognition accuracy steadily dropped, and the stability indicator turned directly red. On the right, the results converged smoothly. I said, the erroneous parameter doesn't show obvious problems in small sample data, but once it enters the full test set, it makes the model unstable. This mistake only exists in the decoy version I left on my desktop before it was copied. The defense room was eerily silent. Sue Man suddenly burst into tears. "I don't know. I really don't know. This was a bait version. Professor Zhou said I could compile materials from the research group, so She stopped mid-sentence, but it was too late. Zhou Mingyuan's face turned ashen in an instant. "Sue Man, don't talk nonsense." Sue Man looked at him as if grasping at a lifeline. "Professor Zhou, didn't you say this direction could count as the team's work? Didn't you say that even if Lin Jixia had objections, we could suppress them first?" And deal with it after the evaluation. The room erupted in a roar. I stood by the projector, lowering my eyes. In my past life, one stole and the other suppressed, working seamlessly together. In this life, once the blade is at their own throat, they're quicker than anyone to sever ties. Zhou Mingyuan stood up, his voice icy. Student Su Man, you're emotionally agitated right now. Please don't say things that don't align with the facts. Su Man cried even harder. Then why did you help me revise my thesis? Why did you say the outstanding thesis spot couldn't be compromised? Why did you tell me not to fear Lin Jixia? Zhou Mingyuan slammed the table. Enough. The defense chair immediately stood up. Pause the defense. The entire lecture hall was in chaos. People were recording videos, others whispered in low voices, and the college leadership's expressions were grim to the extreme. I didn't move, not until the defense chair looked at me. Student Lin Jixia, submit your materials first. The college will initiate an investigation into this matter. I asked, may I request an on-site record, that Su Man's defense be suspended, and the evaluation for the outstanding thesis be postponed. The defense chair glanced at the college leadership. Shen Yan spoke up, I recommend keeping a record, otherwise, there will be procedural flaws. The college leadership's face twitched. Finally, the defense chair nodded, make a record. I placed the paper materials on the table, each copy numbered, each page with a backup. As I stepped down from the stage, my fingers finally trembled a little, not from fear. I had waited too long for this moment. In my past life, I was shut out. In this life, I stood on the stage, laying the evidence out page by page for everyone to see. As I passed Shen Yan, he said in a low voice, well done, just those 4 words, yet my eyes nearly burned. I didn't stop, only nodded lightly. Walking out of the lecture hall, sunlight streamed in from the corridor windows, casting onto the floor, blinding, yet bright. Su Man was quickly taken away by the counselor, and Zhou Mingyuan was called into the side meeting room by the college leadership. The students standing in the corridor looked at me with completely changed expressions, shock, embarrassment, and even lingering fear. Those who had once cursed me on forums lowered their heads, unable to meet my eyes. Chen Mian stood behind the crowd, her face pale. When I walked past her, she suddenly called out, Jixia. I stopped. Her lips trembled. That night, Su Man seemed to have touched your computer. I woke up once in the middle of the night and saw her standing by your desk. I thought she was just turning off your screen. She couldn't finish. I didn't grab her and ask, why didn't you say so earlier, like I had in my past life? This time, I no longer had to rely on others' consciences to survive. I simply asked, are you willing to write a statement? Chen Mian looked up, her eyes red. She nodded. I am, I said. Think it through. Once you write it, you can't say you didn't know anything anymore. She took a deep breath. I've thought it through. I looked at her for a few seconds, then nodded. Good. At noon that day, the video of the defense went viral on the campus forum. The headlines were increasingly sensational. Information School Outstanding Thesis Defense Goes Off the Rails. Stolen Thesis. Original author replicates on site to expose the truth. Supervisor suspected of covering up. Clashes with student on spot. I didn't click on the comments. I just downloaded and saved the original video. At 3 p.m., the research office officially notified me. The school had set up a special investigation team, suspending Su Man's evaluation for outstanding thesis and graduate school recommendation, while Zhou Mingyuan was also temporarily barred from participating in this year's undergraduate thesis evaluation. When I saw the notice, I was sitting in a corner of the library, with leaves rustling outside the window in the wind. I read that email over and over again. In my past life, I waited until death for this process to start, and in this life, it finally did. My phone vibrated. Shen Yan sent a message, eat. I looked at those 2 words and couldn't help but smile. Can't you say something else? He replied, what you need most right now is to eat. I responded, Teacher Shen, are you always this blunt when comforting people? After half a minute, he replied, I'm not good at comforting. Then another line, but I can help you organize the next round of materials. I stared at the screen and suddenly felt that a long empty space in my heart was slowly being filled. After the incident broke out, Su Man disappeared for 2 days. She didn't return to the dormitory or speak in the class group, but on the 3rd night, she posted a long article titled, I don't know why hard work has become a mistake. In it, she claimed she had lived in Lin Jixia's shadow since her freshman year, saying I had good grades and teachers liked me, so she always felt inferior. She said the thesis was independently completed after discussions with me. But she was just not good at expressing herself and was too nervous during the defense to explain clearly. She also wrote, "I deliberately set up false parameters in the thesis to trap her." The article ended with, "If hard work can be slandered by some people, then I really don't know how ordinary students can survive." Soon, people started sharing it. Some called me scheming, others said, "Even if you used your work, you deliberately set a trap, that's not ethical," and still others commented, "Lin Jixia isn't simple either, who would set a trap for themselves." I looked at those comments, feeling very calm. In my past life, I feared public opinion the most, afraid of strangers cursing me, classmates pointing fingers, and my parents feeling sad reading those words. But after being reborn, I understood, public opinion is like a tide, flowing east today and west tomorrow. Only evidence is like a stone sinking to the bottom, never washed away. I didn't reply to Sue Man, I only posted a timeline, no emotions, no insults, from the topic proposal last September, to the file being copied on May 13th, to Sue Man's submission, the public defense, and the school's suspension of evaluation. Each point was accompanied by a screenshot of evidence. The last line read, "I have retained a lawyer to reserve the right to pursue legal action against those spreading rumors, slander, and maliciously disseminating false information." After posting, I turned off my phone and continued organizing materials. Half an hour later, the forum's sentiment began to shift. "This timeline is way too complete, isn't it? Sue Man's long article is all emotion, Lin Jixia's is all evidence. What's wrong with the bait version? She put it on her own computer. No one forced him to steal it. The scariest part is the supervisor. How did a stolen thesis get recommended all the way?" At 9 p.m., Sue Man's long post was deleted, but it was already too late. I had saved the full text, the comments, and the reposts, all of which would serve as evidence for subsequent defamation proceedings. The school's investigation team formally met with me for the first time on Friday morning. I brought all the originals with me. There were 5 people seated in the meeting room, representatives from the research office, the academic affairs office, the college's academic committee, and a teacher from the information center. They questioned me in great detail. When was the file created? Was anyone else involved in the code? On which instrument were the experimental data collected? Had Sue Man ever participated in the discussions? I answered each question. I wasn't afraid of them asking, I was afraid they wouldn't. After reviewing my computer records, the teacher from the information center adjusted his glasses and said, "The serial numbers of external devices can be traced. We need to cross-check them with Sue Man's equipment." The teacher from the research integrity office nodded. "We will ask her to cooperate." I added, "I also have a written statement from Chen Mian. She can testify that she saw Sue Man approaching my computer that evening." The teacher took it and said, "You prepared very thoroughly." I've heard that phrase too many times lately. Each time, it feels like pulling the disheveled version of me from my past life a little further out of the mud. After the conversation, I ran into Zhou Mingyuan in the hallway. He looked more haggard, but still maintained his composure, his shirt neatly ironed, his glasses spotless. When he saw me, he stopped. "Lin Jixiao." I paused. "Professor Zhou." He looked at me and spoke in a low tone. "Do you really have to take it this far?" I asked back, "How far is that?" He frowned. "Sue Man has already been punished. If you keep pursuing this, the entire college will suffer. Do you think external platforms will always protect you? Do you even want to stay in this circle?" I looked at him and suddenly found it absurd. Even now, he still thought I depended on someone's protection. "Professor Zhou," I said, "you still don't understand. I've come this far not because anyone is protecting me." I looked into his eyes. "It's because I actually did those experiments." Zhou Mingyuan's expression changed. I continued, "What Sue Man stole was a file, not ability. What you can suppress are students, not the truth." Zhou Mingyuan's voice turned cold. "Lin Jixiao, young people shouldn't be so sharp." I smiled. "I used to be too blunt, and that's how I got crushed before. Being a bit sharper this time works just fine." With that, I walked past him, and this time, he didn't call after me. That afternoon, I received a call from an unfamiliar number. "Is this Lin Jixia?" "I'm Su Tang." The name made me pause. Senior sister Su Tang, once Zhou Mingyuan's most brilliant student. In my past life, I had heard of her. Everyone said it was a pity that she was originally suited for a PhD but ended up at an ordinary company. I gripped my phone tightly. "Hello, senior sister." She was silent for a few seconds on the other end. "I saw your defense video." Zhou Mingyuan did the same to me back then. I walked to the stairwell, where it was quiet. Su Tang's voice was low, as if it had been suppressed for years. In my first year of grad school, I worked on a project. I ran the core experiments and wrote the first draft. Later, Zhou Mingyuan asked me to give the first authorship to a senior fellow who needed it for an award, saying I should consider the group's interests. I refused, and he said I was being difficult. She paused and let out a bitter laugh. In the end, I gave in, because I didn't have as much evidence as you, and no one stood up for me. Listening, I felt something choke my chest. It wasn't just me. Under Zhou Mingyuan's respectable facade, how many people's names had been buried? Su Tang said, I still have some old emails and revision records. They might be useful to you. I asked, Senior sister, have you thought this through? If you bring them out, you might get involved. She was silent for a long time, then said softly, I've been telling myself all these years, let the past be the past, but seeing you stand on that stage, I suddenly felt, I haven't moved past it. I've just been scared. I didn't push her. I only said, Senior sister, if you're willing, I'll send you the file format. If you're not, I understand. She took a deep breath. Send it to me. After hanging up, I stood in the stairwell for a long time. Outside the window, students walked by with books, laughing and chatting about dinner plans. The world was still lively, while those whose names had been stolen had quietly stepped away one by one. This time, I wanted to open the door, even if it only let a few people walk back in. That evening, I went for an in-person interview at Mingchuan platform. It was our first face-to-face meeting. He was taller than on video, standing at the entrance, holding a temporary access card. As he walked toward me, he handed me the card. Lin Jixia, temporary project access. I took it. The card was simple, with no fancy designs, just my name and the project number. Looking at those 3 characters, my nose suddenly tingled. Shen Yan didn't ask me, what's wrong? He just said, come in and take a look. The Mingchuan platform wasn't large, but it was very clean. Every project had an independent log, and every data call had a record. On the whiteboard were posted the authorship rules, the first one being, contributions must be traceable. Authorship requires confirmation. I stood in front of that whiteboard for a long time without moving. Shen Yan stood beside me. Has it always been like this here? I asked. Not before, he said. I looked at him. Shen Yan's gaze rested on the whiteboard, his voice calm. I had my authorship taken before too. I was stunned. He didn't elaborate, only said, later, when I built the platform myself. The first thing I did was write the rules on the wall. I looked down at the access card in my hand. Shen Yan, I used to dream that I was standing outside a door. Everyone inside was applauding, but no one could hear me. He was silent for a long while, then said, I've stood outside that door too. Just that one sentence, and I suddenly understood. He wasn't cold by nature. Some pains just weren't worth talking about. I looked at the whiteboard and smiled. Then let's make the door wider from now on. Shen Yan turned his head to look at me, and after a few seconds, he smiled too. We can. Senior sister Su Tang's materials were more complete than I had anticipated. She hadn't just accepted her fate, she had saved emails, saved draft versions, and even saved the chat records where Zhou Mingyuan told her to prioritize the bigger picture. But back then, she had no platform and no courage to hand them over. I organized her materials chronologically and submitted them separately from my own. The school's investigation team's attitude shifted noticeably after seeing them. Initially, they thought this was just a dispute over paper authorship between students, but now that it involved Zhou Mingyuan's long history of irregular authorship attributions among his graduate students, it was no longer just Su Man's problem. On Monday morning, the notice that Zhou Mingyuan had been suspended from recruiting graduate students spread across the department. The class group chat was eerily silent. No one spoke up for Su Man anymore, and no one dared to make snide remarks at me. Most of the posts cursing me on the forum were deleted overnight, but I knew this wasn't over. Su Man's family had come to the school. That afternoon, as I came out of the library, a middle-aged woman stopped me. She was dressed elegantly, with a shiny bracelet on her wrist, her eyes red-rimmed but carrying a condescending scrutiny. Are you Lin Jixia? I stopped. I am. She immediately grabbed my wrist. I'm Su Man's mother. Lin, please, Auntie begs you, let Man go. She's still young. She just made a momentary mistake. You can't ruin her whole life. I pulled my hand back. Please don't grab me. Tears streamed down her face. How can you be so heartless? You're roommates. She told me you've always been excellent, and she was under so much pressure that she made a mistake. But who doesn't make mistakes when they're young? Do you have to push her to the brink? People around had started to look. The familiar tactic. Crying and pleading, turning the blame into my cruelty. I asked, Auntie, when Sue Man stole my paper, did she ever think about whether it would ruin my whole life? She paused, then quickly said, but you're fine now, aren't you? You weren't actually expelled. But if Man gets an academic misconduct record, she's finished. I looked at her. Last time, I was truly finished. No one stood up and said, Lin Jixia is still young, let her off. No one, I said. She's not ruined by me, but by what she did herself. The woman's face changed. How can you be so cold-blooded? It's just a paper, just a paper. I suddenly laughed. I took out my phone from my bag and opened the recording interface. Auntie, I've already recorded what you just said. If you continue to harass me in public, I'll call the police and submit this recording to the school. The woman's expression froze. I looked at her. Also, please tell Sue Man, stop trying to turn her mistakes into a sympathy test for others. If she truly knows she's wrong, she should cooperate with the investigation. With that, I walked past her and left. After a few steps, I noticed Shen Yan standing not far away. He was holding a document, probably here for a collaboration meeting at the school. I asked, how long have you been watching? He said, since she grabbed your wrist. Then why didn't you come over? Shen Yan looked at me. Did you need me to? I paused, then smiled. No, so I didn't come. I suddenly realized this person really understood boundaries. He wouldn't rush into play the hero when I could handle it myself. He just stood where I could see him. If I needed him, he'd come. If I didn't, he'd let me win on my own. We walked side by side. Shen Yan handed me the document, the National College Student Scientific Research Innovation Challenge. The Mingchuan platform can co-submit with you as the core lead. I stopped in my tracks. Now, he said, you can't just be trapped in the rights defense. Your project needs to move forward. I looked down at the application form. The project name was already filled in, Multi-Scenario Anomaly Recognition System for Complex Environments. With the lead, Lin Jixia, I stared at my own name and suddenly felt a warmth at my fingertips. In my past life, I had tried everything but couldn't get my name back on the paper. In this life, my name appeared at the start of a bigger project. Shen Yan said, you can refuse. I looked up. Why would I refuse? The corner of his mouth twitched slightly. Then sign it. I took the pen and wrote my name after the lead section, stroke by stroke. More seriously than ever, that evening, I went back to the dorm to organize the competition materials. Sue Man hadn't returned yet. Her desk was a mess, with cosmetics, tissues, and printed documents scattered everywhere. Chen Mian sat in her spot and stood up when she saw me come in. Jixia, yeah, she held out a piece of paper. This is a supplementary statement I wrote. I thought about it. And there's one more thing I should tell you. I took it. It read, on the morning of May 14th, Sue Man borrowed her computer to log into the campus network, claiming her own account had issues. That was the day Sue Man first altered the submission materials. I looked up at Chen Mian. She said quietly, I was afraid of causing trouble before, so I didn't say anything. But later I realized that even staying silent could be used as a tool by her. I looked at her face. She had dark circles under her eyes, as if she hadn't slept well these past few days. I said, thank you. Chen Mian's eyes reddened. I'm sorry. I didn't say, it's okay, because in my past life, her silence had truly hurt me. Even if many things hadn't happened yet in this life, I couldn't speak for the version of me who was pushed to the edge and say, it's okay. I only said, this material is very important. Chen Mian nodded, tears falling. There was no hug between us, nor did we instantly become friends again. Some cracks can't be smoothed over with an apology, but at least this time, she didn't stay silent. That was enough. The preliminary review for the national challenge was a week later. During the day, I cooperated with the school investigation, and at night, I went to the Mingchuan platform for project testing, sleeping less than 5 hours a day. Shen Yan started enforcing a no meetings after 10 p.m. rule. I protested, but he only asked, do you want to win a gold medal or a death certificate? I was left speechless for a long time. He placed a box of candy next to my computer. People with low blood sugar have no right to act like iron men. I unwrapped a candy and put it in my mouth, the sweetness slowly melting. Shen Yan, do you manage all your partners like this? He paused while flipping through documents. No. I waited for a moment, but he didn't continue. I couldn't help asking, then who? He glanced at me. Important partners. I wanted to laugh at his stubbornness, but when I met his eyes, I suddenly couldn't speak. Those eyes were very calm, not like a joke. I looked down and continued reviewing the data, but my ears felt a little warm. Matters of the heart were far down on my original plan. Having been reborn, I only wanted revenge, only wanted to reclaim my life. But Shen Yan wasn't someone who barged in to disrupt my plans. He was more like someone who handed me a lamp as I moved forward, not walking for me, just lighting the next stretch of the road. The school's investigation results came faster than I expected. The first notice was sent to the parties involved. Su Man was found to have obtained and used someone else's thesis work without authorization. Her eligibility for the Outstanding Thesis Award was revoked, her graduate school recommendation was suspended, and her thesis required a re-review. Zhou Mingyuan, as her advisor, was found to have improperly handled disputes over student research results, failed to fulfill research review responsibilities, and neglected due diligence in recommendation materials. His graduate student recruitment was suspended pending further investigation. I stared at the notice, my fingers trembling slightly, not from dissatisfaction, but because at that moment, I suddenly recalled the disciplinary email I had received in my previous life. It was also a notice, but that one said I had committed academic misconduct and maliciously framed others. I appealed repeatedly, but no one listened. This time, the words on the paper finally pointed to the person who had actually done wrong. I printed out the notice and added it to my folder, not to show off, but to remember. Fairness doesn't come automatically, it's forced out by a piece of evidence, a timeline, and a confrontation you endure. In the afternoon, I received a call from my mother. Her voice was a bit urgent. Jixia, did something happen at your school? Your dad saw a video about your school. I held the phone, my throat tightening. In my previous life, my parents also found out about my troubles from others. By then, the notices were everywhere. When they called, I was hiding in my rented room, too afraid to answer. I was afraid of their disappointment, afraid they would ask why I had turned out this way, but my mother only cried on the phone and said, Jixia, Mom believes you. Can you come home? That sentence sustained me for a long time, and made me hate myself even more for not being able to protect them. This time, I took a deep breath. Mom, there's a bit of an issue, but it's being handled. I didn't do anything wrong. There was a second of silence on the other end, and then my mother said, as long as you didn't do wrong, it's okay, don't be afraid, Mom's here. Tears suddenly welled up, and I looked up at the ceiling to hold them back. My mother asked again, have you eaten? You always skip meals when you're busy. I laughed. I ate. Someone made sure of it. Who? I pretended to be nonchalant. Just as Shen Yan walked over and placed a report on the table, he caught a bit of the conversation and paused. I cleared my throat. A collaborator. My mother immediately became sharp. Male or female collaborator? Shen Yan glanced at me. My ears burned. Mom, I have to go now. I still have materials to organize. After hanging up, Shen Yan said flatly, collaborator. I put the phone down. What else? He pushed the report toward me. An important collaborator. I shot him a glare, and the corner of his mouth lifted slightly. That evening, we received the preliminary approval notice for the National Challenge. The finals were 2 weeks away, held at the Haicheng Science and Technology Convention Center. Mingchuan Platform placed great importance on this competition and specially arranged a demonstration space for me. I became the project lead, and also the youngest person on the entire team. At first, some people were unconvinced. A research engineer looked at me and said, not exactly politely, an undergraduate as the project lead, are you sure, President Shen, that you're not just letting her take credit? Before I could respond, Shen Yan turned to me. Lin Jixia, answer for yourself. He didn't shield me, and I didn't need him to. I walked to the whiteboard, picked up a marker, and directly drew the entire model architecture, from data input to feature extraction, anomaly detection, and dynamic threshold adjustment. After finishing, I turned to the engineer. You can question my academic background, but you'd better understand my model first. The meeting room fell silent for 2 seconds, and someone chuckled softly. The engineer's face reddened a bit, but he still asked 3 questions. I answered them one by one. He was silent for a moment before saying, sorry, I was prejudiced. I nodded, accepted. Shen Yan stood by the conference table, a faint smile in his eyes. After the meeting, he walked me to the elevator. How do you feel? Better than facing Su Man, I said. At least he asked about technical issues. Shen Yan nodded. There will be more of this kind of questioning in the future, I know. Scared, I pressed the elevator button. No, as long as they're asking questions, not trying to take my name. Shen Yan was silent for a moment, the elevator doors opened, and I stepped inside, turning back to look at him. He stood outside and suddenly said, Lin Jixia, your name will be in many places from now on. I froze, the elevator doors slowly closed. I saw him watching me through the gap, his gaze calm and resolute. At that moment, I suddenly remembered the name that had been flagged in my past life, Lin Jixia. Back then, it was followed by academic misconduct. This time, it would be followed by projects, patents, awards, and the future. I lowered my head and smiled. I was alone in the elevator, but for the first time, I felt the path ahead was bright. The investigation deepened. Senior Sister Su Tang's materials uncovered more old stories. A graduate who had already graduated sent an email saying he had also been asked to give up his authorship back then. Another student anonymously provided clues about abnormal project funding reimbursements. Zhou Mingyuan was no longer just negligent in review. His paper authorship, project materials, and student contribution records from the past few years were all being re-examined. The atmosphere in the college was tense. People who used to greet Zhou Mingyuan warmly now walked around his office. I passed by once and saw him sitting alone inside, the curtain half drawn, a few leaves of the pot hose on his desk turning yellow. He looked up and saw me, a flicker of embarrassment in his eyes. I didn't stop, nor did I offer a victor's sneer, because he wasn't worth my time. I had more important things to do. The day before the finals, the school released its second notice. Su Man's graduate school recommendation qualification was officially revoked, and she needed to choose a new topic for her thesis. With a record of academic misconduct filed in the college's integrity archive, Zhou Mingyuan was stripped of his eligibility to supervise students this year. His ongoing undergraduate research projects were suspended, and he faced further accountability. At the same time, the school acknowledged that its earlier handling of Lin Jixia's objection to the attribution of her work had been insufficiently timely and would reevaluate her paper contributions. After the notice was issued, my advisor called me, speaking cautiously. Jixia, the college wants to ask if you'd be willing to participate in a research symposium as an outstanding student representative later. I listened and suddenly found it ironic. In my past life, the college drove me out. This time, they wanted me back as a representative. I didn't refuse outright. I can consider it. But first, I have 3 demands. The advisor paused. Go ahead. First, the school must publicly revoke all records unfavorable to me. Second, formally confirm the attribution of my paper contributions. Third, issue me a written apology. There was a long silence on the other end. The advisor said quietly, I need to report this to the leadership. I said, fine. After hanging up, I looked out the window. Someone was running on the track, sunlight falling on the glaring red. I was no longer the person begging the school to clear my name. Now, they needed to admit their mistakes to me. The weather was fine on the day of the Haiqing finals. Outside the convention center hung a massive banner, National University Student Scientific Innovation Challenge Finals. Standing at the entrance, watching the teams of contestants come and go, I suddenly felt a moment of daze. If that disaster hadn't happened in my past life, would I have been standing here in the sunlight with my own project like this? I quickly pulled myself together. That past life was over. Standing here in this life was enough. The booth arranged for me by the Mingchuan team was in Zone B. As I was setting up the demo equipment, I saw several familiar faces approaching from a distance. Teachers from the School of Information, and Teacher Li. Their expressions were somewhat complicated when they saw me. Teacher Li spoke first. Jixia, how are the preparations? I replied, not bad. He looked at my display board, his gaze landing on the project lead column. The 3 characters, Lin Jixia, he said softly, very impressive. I nodded, thank you. Another teacher from the school said awkwardly, Jixia, the school did handle some things poorly before, don't take it too much to heart. I looked at him. If it were the me from my past life, I might have cried at this belated softening, but now, it just felt too light. Not enough. A casual, don't take it to heart, couldn't erase a student's nearly ruined life. I said calmly, teacher, I'll wait for the school's formal follow-up action. His face stiffened, and he said no more. Shen Yan walked over from the side, handing me my contestant badge. The judges will be here in 10 minutes. I took it. Okay. He glanced at those teachers but said nothing more. After they walked away, I asked, are you afraid I might start a fight? No, he said, I was afraid they'd affect your mood. I smiled. Then you underestimated me. Shen Yan looked at me. I underestimated you. Project Lead Lin. The title, Project Lead Lin, coming from his mouth inexplicably made my heart warm. The judging began soon after. This wasn't an undergraduate defense. The panel included university professors, corporate technical directors, and investment institution representatives. Their questions were sharper than those from the school teachers. Is your model stable under extreme noise scenarios? How do you avoid overfitting in multi-source data fusion? How do you control costs for commercial deployment, if applied in medical or security scenarios? How do you handle data compliance? Every question was harder than the one Su Man had failed to answer, but I stood on stage without a hint of stage fright, because I had truly done these things. I wasn't someone reciting answers, I was someone writing them. I explained from model logic to experimental results, from platform testing to application scenarios. When a judge asked for an on-site switch of test data, I directly operated the system and ran the results. As the curves on the big screen converged smoothly, I heard someone in the audience murmur, "This level of completion is impressive." The last judge asked me, "Lin, why did you choose this direction?" I held the microphone and paused for a second. I could have said something polished, like the broad prospects of intelligent perception, or the social value of anomaly detection, but at that moment, I suddenly didn't want to just say the usual pleasantries. I said, because for a long time, I've been thinking about one thing. When a person's efforts are misidentified, drowned out by noise, or covered by external labels, is there a way to retrieve the true signal? The venue fell silent. My research is about identifying data anomalies, but for me, it also feels like a reminder. Real things might be obscured for a while, but as long as they leave clear enough traces, they can be seen again. After I finished, the audience was silent for a few seconds, and then applause broke out, not particularly thunderous, but sincere. I saw Shen Yan standing by the booth, looking at me. He wasn't clapping dramatically, but there was light in his eyes. The final results were announced in the afternoon. We won the gold medal, and our project also received the Best Application Potential Award. When the host read out the names, I stood below the stage, my palms slightly sweaty. Gold medal project, Multi-Perception Anomaly Recognition System for Complex Scenarios, lead, Lin Jixia. The spotlight fell on me as I walked up to the stage to accept the certificate. Applause rang out from the audience. At that moment, I didn't look at the faculty members from my college, nor did I think about Su Man or Zhou Mingyuan. I just remembered that early morning of my rebirth, sitting at my dorm desk, smiling as I deleted that paper. Back then, I thought I was deleting a decoy, but now I realize I was deleting the ending that trapped me in my past life. After the award ceremony, a professor from a top-tier lab approached me, asking if I'd consider a direct PhD track. Corporate representatives also handed me business cards, hoping to discuss future patent collaborations. I took them one by one without immediately agreeing. In my past life, I didn't even get my diploma. In this life, with so many choices, I've become more cautious instead. In the evening, Shen Yan took me to the pedestrian bridge outside the convention center. The sunset fell on the city's glass curtain walls, casting a golden glow. He handed me a new lab notebook, black cover, clean and thick. I opened the first page, where it read, Lin Jixia, Independent Project Notebook. The first entry belongs to you. My eyes grew warm. I closed the notebook and deliberately said, "You really don't know how to give gifts." Shen Yan looked at me. "You'll use it." I laughed for a long time, laughing until tears almost fell. Shen Yan hummed softly. "Thank you," he said. "Don't thank me, you walked the path yourself." I looked down at the notebook. "But some paths are really cold to walk alone." Shen Yan was silent for a moment, then reached out his hand. His hand stopped in mid-air, not touching me directly, as if waiting for me to choose. I looked at that hand and suddenly remembered what he had said. Don't trust people, look at contracts, look at permissions, look at processes, but feelings aren't contracts, they don't have so many verifiable terms. Yet I knew that all along this journey, he had never made decisions for me or taken away my agency. He just stood by my side. I placed my hand in his palm. His hand was warm. Shen Yan held it gently, his grip restrained and tender, and said, "From now on, you won't be alone." I looked at the distant sunset and didn't argue. The school's formal apology came 3 days after the gold medal results were announced. In the notice, the school acknowledged that it had not given sufficient attention to my earlier objection regarding the attribution of my work, and that there were errors in the handling process. formally revoking any records that could have adversely affected me and confirming the originality of my paper's core findings. At the same time, the school issued a written apology to me. When that apology letter was handed to me, I wasn't as excited as I had imagined. I just placed it on the table and stared at it for a long time. In my past life, I couldn't get this even with my life. This time, it was finally in black and white before me. My parents came to the school specially. My mother's eyes reddened repeatedly as she held the apology letter. My father stood beside her and finally said just one sentence. "My daughter did nothing wrong." Such a simple sentence almost made me cry. I hugged them. I knew that this time, I could finally stand tall and tell them, I did nothing wrong. Sue Mann's final verdict came down: academic misconduct recorded in her file, revocation of her graduate school recommendation, cancellation of her outstanding graduate status, and her thesis had to be rewritten under a different advisor, no longer Zhou Mingyuan. I heard her family came to make a scene a few times, but the school didn't back down this time, because the matter had gone public, and every step was under scrutiny. The tears she once wielded so effectively finally lost their power in the face of evidence. The last time I saw Sue Mann was on the day she moved out of the dorm. She had lost a lot of weight, her face bare of makeup, her eyes bloodshot. She stood at the door watching me pack my lab notebooks into boxes. After a long silence, she said, "Lin Jixia, are you satisfied?" I paused. "Do you think I should be?" She gritted her teeth. "I just took a paper, and you've ruined my entire life." I looked at her and suddenly felt exhausted. Even at this moment, she still thought she had only taken, not stolen, not robbed, not destroyed someone else's path. I placed the last notebook into the box. "Sue Mann, your life wasn't ruined by me. It was ruined by every time you thought you could take what belonged to others, every time you thought tears would make it all go away, every time you thought people without connections should just step aside, all of it together." She stood there, lips trembling but unable to speak. I picked up the box and walked past her. This time, I didn't look back. Zhou Mingyuan's punishment was harsher than Sue Mann's. His advisor qualifications were revoked, his project applications suspended, and the authorship of papers he supervised over the past 5 years was subject to review. Senior sister Su Tang's authorship issue was finally re-evaluated. The day she received the notice, she sent me a photo, a belated author contribution statement. She said, "Jixia, I thought I had long stopped caring, but when I saw my name restored, I realized I wasn't indifferent. I just didn't dare to hope." I replied, "Senior sister, welcome back." She sent back a smiley face. Later, Su Tang joined my new project, handling the data governance part. She was no longer the troublesome student. In Zhou Mingyuan's words, she had become someone who reclaimed her name. Before graduation, the college invited me to a research integrity symposium. This time, I went. Not to save face for the college, but to say a few words to the students who would come after me. The venue was the same lecture hall, where Sue Mann had her breakdown during the public defense, and where I first laid out the evidence. Now I stood on the same stage, with many underclassmen in the audience, some looking at me with bright eyes. I held the microphone and didn't preach too much. "When doing research, please protect your original records." Someone in the audience laughed, and I smiled too. "This isn't a joke. Every piece of data, every revision, every draft is a trace of your effort. Don't think discussing authorship hurts feelings, and don't think keeping evidence means distrusting others. Truly healthy collaborations aren't afraid of clear rules. If one day you find your work taken, don't just cry, don't just endure. First preserve the evidence, then follow the process. Believe that truth requires both courage and method." When I finished, applause broke out. I saw Shen Yan sitting in the last row. He wasn't an invited guest from the school, but had come as my important collaborator to listen. As I stepped off the stage, he handed me a bottle of water. "Well said." I took it. "Teacher Shen, what's the score?" 9 out of 10. "What's the 1.4? You didn't eat breakfast." I couldn't help but laugh. "How do you still remember that?" He looked at me. An important collaborator needs long-term maintenance. My ears grew warm, and I pretended not to hear. On graduation day, the weather was as hot as in the previous life. The pavement outside the auditorium was bleached white by the sun. I stood at the door in my graduation gown and suddenly stopped. In the previous life, I was also here, holding an appeal document, blocked by the security guard outside, while thunderous applause rang inside, but not a single seat belonged to me. This time, the security guard smiled and held the door open for me. "Student, please come in." I walked in. The lights were bright, And a nameplate was pasted on the seat, Lin Jixia, not the name on the notice. Not the name on the expulsion list, but the name of the graduate representative, the leader of the gold medal project, the recognized original achievement holder. As I sat down, I gently touched the nameplate with my fingers, like touching a destiny that had finally been rewritten. After the ceremony, I didn't join many group photos. I went alone to the old dormitory. The desk had been cleared, and there were still faint traces of sticky notes I had left on the wall. I stood in front of that desk, recalling the early morning of my rebirth, the computer screen glowing, the wind slapping the curtains, Sue Man pretending to sleep on the opposite bed. I sat here and deleted that paper with a smile. At that moment, I thought my heart was full of hatred, but looking back now, hatred was just the first breath that lifted me out of the mud. What truly brought me to where I am today was not hatred, but I still want to do research. I still want to put my name where it belongs. I still want those whose voices were stolen to know. Silence is not the only ending. Footsteps came from the door, and I turned to see Shen Yen standing outside. He held a document in his hand. Sorry to interrupt. Is Representative Lin feeling nostalgic? I laughed. How did you find me here? I asked Chen Mian. At the mention of Chen Mian, I paused. Before graduation, she came to formally apologize to me, and I accepted her apology. But we didn't go back to how we were. Some relationships don't need to be torn apart, nor do they need to be repaired. It's enough that we've made it this far together. Shen Yen walked in and handed me the document. I looked down. It was a new project collaboration contract. The first rule on the first page was the naming rule. Lead, Lin Jixia. Collaborator, Shen Yen. I looked up at him. Teacher Shen, are the naming rules in the contract clearly written? He looked at me, a smile in his eyes. First page. First rule, you come first. I flipped to the last page. He had already signed his name, Shen Yen. I took out a pen and wrote my name beside it, Lin Jixia. The two names fell side by side on the paper, not one overshadowing the other, not one saving the other, but two people standing clearly on the same page. After signing, I closed the contract. What's next? Shen Yen said. Keep doing research. I looked at the empty dormitory, and, he thought for a moment, eat. I rolled my eyes at him, and he finally laughed out loud. Sunlight streamed in through the window, shining on the desk that had witnessed theft, betrayal, and rebirth. Now the desktop was clean, with nothing left behind. I reached out and touched the leg of the desk, then turned and walked out. Shen Yen followed beside me. As we left the dormitory building, the wind blew through the treetops, carrying the humid heat of summer. I looked back once. The last time, I was trapped here for too long. This time, I finally walked out. Not escaping, but walking out with dignity. My parents were waiting for me outside the school gate. Senior sister Su Tang also sent a message saying the new project data plan was ready. In the Mingchuan platform group, everyone was discussing the next phase of testing. My phone kept lighting up. Every message pointed to a new path. Shen Yen turned to me and asked, Lin Jixia, are you ready? I looked ahead. The sky was blue. The road was long. I smiled and said, I'm ready. This time, I'm no longer afraid of others stealing my life, because I already know that what truly belongs to me is not just the paper, but ability, clarity, evidence, the courage to put my name back where it belongs, and a life where every step forward is signed with my own name. After hearing the story above, what are your thoughts? Feel free to share your opinions in the comments section. Looking forward to hearing from you. If you liked this story, don't forget to like it, share it, and subscribe to my channel. See you next time.